Here we go again, introducing yet another member of Disney's 9 old men. Hey, if it was up to me, we'd have 100 old men. Heck, 1,000,000 old men. We'd never stop. You might have heard of the infamous animator duo Frank and Ollie from their books and movies and cameos. We've already covered Frank on this channel, but today let's focus on Ollie and what separates him from other animators at the studio. Before we start, don't forget to check out our Discord, our coffee page, and like, subscribe, comment, hit the bell, all the things. It really helps us out. Ollie Johnston Jr. was born in 1912 in Palo Alto, California. His father was a professor at Stanford University, so he pretty much grew up on the campus of the university. From the very beginning, Ollie became fascinated with the way different people felt in different situations. He began to analyze and study people, and found that he could easily connect and understand their emotions. He also began to draw, although he later stated he didn't naturally draw very well, and it took him endless amounts of hard work to get his skill good enough to be an animator. Ollie was also a very sick child, with palsy being the most difficult to deal with. This made his body, particularly his hand, shake. Not helpful when you're trying to become an artist. In high school, Johnston didn't get much encouragement to go into art, especially from his, let me check my notes, art teachers. Oh, geez.
Tell you the truth, I can't remember the first drawing I ever made, but I know I started when I was, in kindergarten. Like most people who like to draw, I drew all my life. All through high school, generally drawing when I wasn't supposed to be.
In 1931, he started at Stanford with a journalism major, but his interest in art continued. To satisfy his creativity, he started work with the humor magazine Stanford Chaparral. Because you gotta laugh.
These were caricatures of a football team that we had. I was a manager, one of the managers of the team, and I also covered the sport of football in the Stanford paper.
Around this time, Ollie met someone who would change his life forever. Frank Thomas, a young man attending the university who also worked for the Stanford Chaparral. Shortly after, Ollie decided to pursue a career as an illustrator.
You know, an illustrator has to portray the characters in a way that interests the reader in reading that particular story. And the way they do it is through showing the emotions of the character and the mood of the story in the illustrations. The art was what I really liked. And, of course, people said, well, gee, you'll be living in an attic on bread ends and carrot tops. Artists can't make any money. This was in the middle of the Depression, you know.
In 1933, Frank graduated from Stanford and moved down to Los Angeles, where he began at the Schoenard Art Institute. Ollie would soon follow, excited by the possibilities the school offered. Two of his most influential teachers were Don Graham and Pruitt Carter. In 1935, Don Graham recommended that he try out to work at Disney, since they were looking for art school talent.
I tried out by drawing the 3 little pigs, each one with a musical instrument, and I was supposed to complete a good in-between in a half hour. Somehow by the end of the week I did that, but I don't think there was any expert judging it.
Ollie did his tryout and was hired on January 21st, 1935. He started as most artists at the time did, as an in-betweener, drawing the frames in between poses.
Well, it only took about 2 or 3 weeks to hook me. I could see that, gee, this is just the kind of thing. Here you can bring this character to life. Well, these are just frozen on the paper. But these other characters, they can move and they can express their feelings and their emotions and their thoughts. And to me, that was wonderful. And while somebody else might be more interested in the drawing of the character in that situation, I was particularly interested in how that character actually felt.
I used to have a job as an in-betweener too. I'd get a little bit of work done between naps. And now I'm still an in-betweener. In between jobs. Ollie's first work as a cleanup artist was on Mickey's Garden. His first major work at the studio, however, was cleaning up Jerry Geronimi's animation on Mickey's Rival. Those were the best damned cleanups I ever saw, remembered legendary Disney director Wilfred Jackson. I guess you could say he was cleaning up on the cleaning up, you know? Yeah, you get it.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Shake, Sonny.
Soon after, Ollie would be promoted to assistant to probably the most influential artist in his life. March 23, 1936, a most important day, stated Ollie, the day I became Fred Moore's assistant. Through Moore, Ollie was able to work on the Dwarfs in Snow White. On the first film, Ollie not only worked as Fred's assistant, but also was the head assistant on all of the Dwarfs. One of the challenges this job brought was juggling the differences between his mentor's drawing and the bold, passionate, and strong drawings done by Bill Teitla. Fortunately, Johnston was able to make the two animators' scenes work well together. During the production, he learned a ton from Fred's approach to animation. From Fred, I learned that acting comes from the change of shapes in the character's body and face, while the thought process comes from the change in expression, Ollie explained. I also learned from him how important the expressions are. You can't show it unless you stage it right and give the audience time to see it. Same with acting and attitudes.
Walt had told me after I finished Snow White, doing the cleanups for Fred Moore on Snow White, that I could animate. So the first picture I got onto was a brave little tailor. And the first scenes I got were all crowd scenes. But you'd have thought that I was working on the best-known characters in the world, and that each one of these characters had a personality that you can't believe. And I just really poured myself into it. And of course, at first I made them move too much all over the screen while they're talking. But gradually I calmed it down with Freddie Moore's help. And so it looks okay now, but it's nothing I'd write home about. I drew him looking out the window, I think. But mainly I drew stuff where he was on the giant. And not too many scenes, but some there where he was about to get swallowed and stuff like that. I thought, boy, this is great stuff here. And I'm getting real personality into this. But actually, it was pretty primitive.
Oh, it's still a great cartoon. The Brave Little Tailor is still one of the best.
His work on the short was well received and encouraged Walt to put him on the character of Pinocchio with Frank Thomas, and at that time, Fred Moore. The first animation Johnston did on the character was one of him coming to life. It was the first time I used live action, he told Michael Barrier. I worked my tail off on that thing. However, as soon as Walt saw Frank and Ollie's test of the characters, animation stopped on the film, and the picture was taken back to the story department. Oof. During this story rework period, Milt Kahl redesigned the character and everything came together. Johnston reanimated the opening sequence where he comes to life, but this time did it successfully.
Yes, Pinocchio. I've given you life.
Why?
Because tonight, Geppetto wished for a real boy.
Am I a real boy?
No, Pinocchio. To make Geppetto's wish come true will be entirely up to you.
Up to me?
Prove yourself brave, truthful, and unselfish, and someday you will be a real boy.
A real boy!
That won't be easy.
Although he did a lot of animation on the character of Pinocchio, perhaps Ollie's best work on the film is the scene where he lies to the Blue Fairy.
I was going to school till I met somebody.
Met somebody?
Yeah, two big monsters with big green eyes. Why,
Monsters? Weren't you afraid?
No, ma'am, but they tied me in a big sack.
Don't say. And where was Sir Jiminy?
Oh, Jiminy?
Hey, leave me out of this.
They put him in a little sack.
No.
Well, the big thing that I was trying to convey in the section where Pinocchio's nose was growing was the fact that here's this little guy who's just been brought to life at the age of about 8 or 9 years old, and he doesn't know a darn thing. And here he is, caught in this cage, and here the Blue Fairy shows up and wants to know what happened, how he got in there, and here he's all embarrassed about it and twiddling his pants. He's afraid to face her. He knows he's done wrong, but he really doesn't know why or anything like that. And then he just keeps lying and making it worse, and he's sorry that he does this. And so all these are emotions that you can identify with.
My nose! What's happened?
Perhaps you haven't been telling the truth, Pinocchio.
Perhaps. Oh, but I have. Every single word. Oh, please help me. I'm all sorry.
I'll forgive you this once. But remember, a boy who won't be good might just as well be made of wood.
We'll be good, won't we?
Gee, I really loved that picture because that was my first feature, and I believed in the picture. You know, that's the thing about the pictures that Walt made. I believed it, and I think that that's what made them great, the fact the animators believed so thoroughly in them.
Gee, look, Jiminy, I know.
After Pinocchio, Ollie Johnston went on to animate the Pastoral Symphony segment in Fantasia. How lovely! There, he primarily animated the Cupids and the Centaurs, where he did some great scenes of the Cupids helping prepare the girls to be seen by the guys and putting on makeup.
I enjoyed drawing the girls, and I think they came out pretty good. And I did most of the close-up stuff on the girls where the Cupids were making the hats. And the big challenge there wasn't so much of any emotion in that particular thing. It was more the entertainment that you could get out of watching something being made.
This is a good example of how Ollie always used roundness and S shapes in his characters. This makes his drawings look appealing and work well with Disney magic. Ollie also excelled with the Cupids, giving them clear, expressive pantomime to the point where you can always tell exactly what they're thinking. When the animation of Fantasia was completed in April 1940, Ollie went on to a very ambitious project, Bambi. Johnston would serve alongside Milt Kahl, Frank Thomas, and Eric Larson as the 4 supervising animators on Bambi. Together, they mastered the challenge of creating realistic but personified animals that look believable on the screen.
This is really a beautiful story. Walt took out all the survival of the fittest, you know, animals killing each other and everything. So there's none of that. There's just beautiful relationships between the characters, which are very warm. And that's what he wanted. He wanted these characters to be warm and for the audience to love them. And I think he succeeded there. And the fact that you love Bambi is why you feel sorry for him when his mother died. But you see lots of pictures where a mother or a parent dies. And I think you have to tell those stories. And I think this was beautifully told, and it's just powerful because of that. I don't think we've ever done anything that was any more believable on the screen than that. There was such a finality to it when she died. This wasn't a fantasy, and there was no prince to kiss somebody and bring them back to life. There was no fairy to wave a wand. This was it. And of course it made everything really believable that followed that in the fire and when Bambi gets shot. Everything that happened from then on, you couldn't help but believe.
Previous films broke up the movie by character, but Bambi was done almost entirely by sequence, with only a few exceptions. Mark Davis did pretty much all of Flower, and Eric Larson pretty much all of The Great Owl. Among Ollie's best sequences on the film include Bambi learning how to walk, Bambi meeting Feline, and Bambi's overwhelming first encounter with the great stag,
feeling of Bambi being real innocent and all that, and seeing things for the first time. Gee, he's just barely able to walk, and I have a couple of scenes where he actually fell down, I think. But it was all new to him, a new experience, like a little baby seeing something for the first time. And he meets all the animals, and he meets the little mole who pops up and says, nice sunny day. I always liked that scene.
Good morning. Nice sunny day.
I did stuff where he talks with Thumper, and Thumper tells him, no, don't eat that green stuff, just eat the blossoms.
No, not that green stuff. Just eat the blossoms. That's the good stuff.
Thumper?
Yes, Mama.
What did your father tell you?
About what?
About eating the blossoms and leaving the greens.
Oh, that one. Eating greens is a special treat. It makes long ears and great big feet. But it sure is awful stuff to eat.
And that became a kind of a running gag, with Thumper always saying the first thing that popped into his head, and that was part of what made his character so good, besides the great voice.
All of Johnston's scenes in the film have great usage of subtle, believable gestures that clearly communicate sincerity. In comparison to the other supervising animators, Johnston drew the Bambi characters more round and simplistic in terms of design. While Ollie's scenes lack the draftsmanship of Call or the deep thinking of Thomas, he makes up for it with complete honesty, pure emotion, and sensitivity, which makes his scenes force the audience to connect and sympathize with the characters. Which to us is, understandably, a beautiful thing to have. Being one of the 9 old men, you can imagine how much more there is to Ollie's story. Let's just say there's a whole lot. Here's a here's a sneak peek.
What you need is a shave. A nice, soothing shave. There now.
Thank you to these people for supporting us on Patreon and Ko-fi. And if you want to make sure this channel sticks around, you can check out our Ko-fi link in the description. Every bit helps. Thank you for watching this episode of Discographies. Click the thumbs up button below if you liked it. And if you want to be notified when the next episode comes out, consider subscribing and hitting the bell. Comment below with characters you would like to see us cover. Further reading and references are linked below. We hope to see you in another Discography.